In today's story, we'll be based over here on the East Coast. Let's start with Ernestine Ryans. Ernestine, who was referred to as Steen by her loved ones, was born on October 23rd, 1970 in Hartford, Connecticut. Steen was known to be the life of the party. She never seemed to have a bad day. She was always happy, sporting a big smile, and was said to be very stylish. She was described to be one of the kindest, gentlest souls walking earth. She loved the water and loved going to the beach. In February 2018, she moved to Springfield, Massachusetts. She has two daughters, Kiara Starks and Miracle Thomas. Her 25-year-old at the time was living in Pennsylvania, while her 12-year-old at the time was living at home with her. America Jordan Canales Leiden, who was referred to as Jordan by her loved ones, was born on February 9th, 1984 in Holyoke, Massachusetts. If I'm mispronouncing that, forgive me. But at some point, she moved to Springfield, Massachusetts. She also was a mom of two daughters, Tajay Rivera and Niaja Baez, which again, if I'm mispronouncing those names, please forgive me. But she adored her daughters. Jordan had a passion for reading, especially urban fiction and mystery novels, and she had a worldly taste in music, as there were no limits to her playlists. She was known to keep her nails done, sporting her fave colors on her fingers every time she went to the salon, which was either done in red, pink, or purple, matching her vibrant royal personality. She was known to be a little firecracker too, standing at only 4'11", weighing at 95 pounds, but she was no punk. And Kayla Jean Escalante, originally from Ludlow, Massachusetts, was born on May 30th, 1991. She too, at some point, moved to Springfield, Massachusetts. She played first base in the Youth Softball League and attended local schools, including Cathedral Catholic High School and Ludlow High School. However, she opted to receive her GED from the OWL program in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is an adult education center. She was a typical young woman who loved posting selfies on her social media pages and attending local parties with her friends. Kayla was a mom to a daughter whom she gave birth to in late 2015. She didn't have much of a relationship with her own mother, Lori Higgins, as her mother was granted a restraining order against Kayla that was valid through December 2018. I'll circle back to these young women later on in the story. For now, we'll get into a man named Stuart Weldon. Stuart Rudolph Weldon, born June 24th, 1977, is originally from Jamaica, Queens, New York City. As a child, his family uprooted and moved to Upper Montclair, New Jersey. However, as a teenager, Stuart unfortunately lost his father, who passed away for reasons not mentioned upon my research. However, according to those close to the family, the death of his father led his mother to feeling like she needed to overcompensate. So she spoiled Stuart rotten. He was her only son, so anything he asked for, he got it. As he got older, Stuart never did obtain a real job, so he turned to drug dealing as means of income for himself instead. And this was the start of a very lengthy lengthy, violent criminal history. Stewart's first violent offense came when he was just 19 years old in about 96 or 97, when he and a friend by the name Dwight Pottinger visited an area near a mall, allegedly after a party where they met 3 young ladies. After a while of chit-chatting and hanging out, the ladies mentioned how it was time for them to go home. So the guys drove 2 of the girls home, but when it came time to take the third girl home, who was 18 years old at that time, they instead held her hostage, using a gun to intimidate and overpower her. She was raped and assaulted before the men drove her back to her parents' house and then fled the area. They were both later charged and convicted with kidnapping, sexual assault, and unlawful possession of a weapon. Shortly after his release in 1997, Stewart was arrested again in East Orange, New Jersey on weapons charges and kidnapping, to which he pled guilty and had to only serve 3 years probation. In about 2002-2003, he was arrested twice for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. In 2006, he was arrested for burglary and was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison. In 2008, he was arrested for assaulting an officer. He then moved from New Jersey to Springfield, Massachusetts in 2010, where he was then arrested for breaking and entering into a liquor store and then led police on a high-speed chase. He was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, assault of an officer, and threats of murder, which resulted in an 18-month jail sentence. In 2015, he was arrested for threatening to shoot up a downtown bar after he assaulted a security guard by punching him in the face. In 2017, shortly after having his first child, a little boy, Stewart was wanted for accusations of attacking a woman. When police caught up to him in traffic, he again led them on a high-speed chase, which ended when he tried to ram his car into another police car. He was charged with assault with a dangerous weapon and assault of a police officer. His bail was set at $2,500 but was downgraded to $1,000, which his mother paid off, and he was released from police custody, moving into his mother's home at that time. In February 2018, he was supposed to have been wearing an ankle monitor as a result of one of the charges he collected like Pokemon, but he cut the ankle monitor off and took off, slipping away from the grip of the law that should have been much tighter.
Stewart Weldon has a history of arrests in Western Massachusetts. Let's go over that. The 22 News I-Team found out that Weldon had been arrested twice in Westfield in 2015 and 2016. He was charged with assault and battery and assault with a dangerous weapon in Westfield District Court back in January 2015. In June 2016, he was arraigned in Westfield District Court on multiple motor vehicle charges, including driving with a suspended license, driving a car with an expired inspection sticker, and an open container violation. He was only prosecuted for driving with a suspended license. Weldon was also arrested more than a dozen times in Springfield. He has faced charges ranging from assault and battery on a police officer to assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. According to court documents, he served time in 2010 in connection to breaking and entering and assault with a dangerous weapon. 22 News I-Team reporter Tamara Sakarczyk is continuing to look into Weldon's background.
Now let's fast forward a little to a few months later. It was a late Sunday evening on May 27th, 2018, approximately 11:15 p.m. when police were working doing their routine checkpoint at specific intersections in Springfield, Massachusetts. They had noticed a black Nissan Altima with a broken taillight, so police signaled for the driver to pull over. However, instead of pulling over, the driver sped off. The driver being Stewart Weldon, who was now 40 years old at this time. With Stewart speeding off, this prompted a high-speed chase with police, which went on for about 10 minutes up until police caught up with him by interjecting the direction he was going in, where he then smashed into a police cruiser. And one thing I'm noticing about this story, Stewart loved going on high-speed chases and smashing into police cars. But anyway, once he realized he was cornered in, he attempted to flee the scene and flee the vehicle, but police were able to catch up to him. They knew something had to be wrong, far worse than just a broken taillight, the way he was trying to flee. Well, you see, Stewart had a woman in his car. The woman, who was said to be about 25 years old, was actually abducted by Stewart, and when the police approached her, they found her in the car severely battered. She told them everything Stewart had done to her. Police called for medical assistance immediately to treat the young woman. She thanked the officers for saving her life and told them him she never thought she'd get away. She was distraught, and through tears, she explained how Stewart held her captive for over a month and refused to let her go. She explained how she was raped repeatedly and beaten with a hammer and pretty much any object that Stewart could get his hands on whenever he got angry. She suffered from multiple stab wounds to her abdomen, a fractured jaw, scrapes and scabs all over her body, bruises, and a leg infection. Authorities described her injuries as quote-unquote grotesque and violent. Of all the research I did, I was unable to put a name or face to the woman in the car that night, but God bless her soul, the Lord wasn't ready for her just yet. She was taken to the hospital where she remained until she recovered and healed. Well, once the story of the young lady went public, another unidentified woman came to police and told them how Stewart offered her a ride home back a couple months in February of 2018. However, instead of taking her home, he brought her back to his place at 1333 Page Boulevard and tried to drag her inside the house. She told police she fought against him, and another woman who happened to be around at the time interrupted his sick plans by jumping in to help. So thank God the woman was able to escape. Police searched Stewart's body for any weapons that Sunday night of the high-speed chase and found a large knife in his hoodie and back pocket. They arrested him and he was charged with torture, sexual assault, and kidnapping. On Tuesday, May 29, 2018, Stewart pled not guilty to said charges in a Springfield District Court. After his arrest, his mother, Constance Weldon, 72 years old at the time, called the police and reported a strong foul smell lingering in their home. On or about Wednesday, May 30th, 2018, police issued a warrant to seize the home and did a search and noticed the horrendous smell of what could be described as rotting flesh. Upon their search, they found 3 decomposed bodies of 3 women. 2 of them were in the basement and 1 was in the shed.
Story we've been covering closely since Wednesday. Multiple bodies found at a home in East Springfield.
22 News reporter Ciara Speller has been covering this story since the very beginning. She joins us live from Page Boulevard.
Well, Rich and Tamara, Thursday night, Hampden County DA Anthony Gallooni confirmed that 3 bodies were in fact found in this Page Boulevard home, leaving many residents in the area wondering how something like this could happen so close to home. This is at 1333 Page Boulevard in East Springfield. Just after noon on Thursday, Gallooni confirmed that 2 bodies were found inside this home. Hours later, he revealed that police found another body on the property. According to court documents obtained by 22 News, 40-year-old Stewart Weldon lives at this home. Weldon was arrested Sunday after he allegedly led police on a brief chase and crashed into a cruiser. Springfield Police spokesman Ryan Walsh told 22 News during that incident, officers found a woman in his car who he had allegedly been holding hostage for a month. Gallooni also said there is no threat to the public and that they can't confirm whether or not Weldon is a suspect in these murders. This is an ongoing investigation, and 22 News will bring you any new information as it becomes available on air, online, and on our 22 News mobile app.
2 of the victims were found bound with a bunch of different wires and cables, and police found a slew of evidence, including all the torture and abuse devices Stewart made with different materials he gathered from around the house. In the basement was found a used condom stuffed in a hole in the wall, a wooden stick with black tape, a metal ceiling hook with wiring wrapped around it, a wooden spindle also wrapped in tape, a stethoscope with a rope, a bottle and some metal piece attached to it, and a blue belt tied with hair. The 3 women who were unfortunately found in his home were Ernestine, Jordan, and Kayla, the 3 women I told you about earlier in this story.
This has been very difficult for our family.
America Leiden's family has been struggling to find answers after the 34-year-old was found dead along with 2 other women inside Stewart Weldon's Springfield home.
We don't know what to think. We don't know what to feel. We have unexplainable feelings at this time.
America was reported missing last summer. 47-year-old Ernestine Ryans was reported missing in March. Her brother says the news has devastated their family.
She didn't deserve for her life to end in the manner in which it did. And that's a hard part for us to really grasp, that she died alone and we couldn't be there to help her.
Weldon was back in court today, facing a second kidnapping charge now after he was arrested just over a week ago. Police say he had a badly beaten woman in the back of his car. But police have not yet named him a suspect in the deaths of the 3 women found in his home. And the families of the victims don't know if any of them knew each other.
And I just want to wish all the victims, I hope they rest in peace and the families find closure and their justice be served.
As the families wait for answers, police continue their search for more clues as they try to give grieving relatives some closure.
We love her. May she rest in peace.
Now, we do know tonight that one of the women lived in this neighborhood, but any connection among those 3 women tonight still is unclear.
Now, Ernestine was reported missing by her loved ones on March 18th, 2018. Jordan was reported missing by her loved ones on December 1st, 2017. And Kayla was never reported missing at all. All the women's deaths were ruled a homicide. They were reported to have been beaten and strangled to death after being raped by Stewart. Ernestine was 47 years old at the time of her death. Her funeral was held on Friday, June 15, 2018 at Howard K. Hill Funeral Services in Bloomfield, Connecticut. Jordan was 34 years old at her time of death. Her funeral was held on Thursday, June 28, 2015 at the Hoffey Funeral Home in Springfield, Massachusetts. Kayla, the youngest of them all, was 26 years old at the time of her death. Her funeral was held on Wednesday, June 13th at the Rattel Funeral Home in Indian Orchard, Massachusetts. Now, I mentioned earlier in this story how Stewart had a son. Well, according to the Daily Mail, his son was living in New Jersey at the time, but apparently he also had a baby daughter who lived with him at 1333 Page Boulevard. And after the seizing of the home, baby girl was taken into emergency custody with DSS, Department of Social Services. Now, this is one of the things I hate about some of these publications because they give mixed stories at times. In some reports, it says the baby girl was only 6 months old. In others, it says the girl was a toddler. In some reports, there's no mention of who the mother or mothers are of the children, but in others, it says the mother of both of his children was actually the 25-year-old that he was caught with in the car. So I really don't know what's true in terms of the backstory to his children. Now, come to find out while doing research, there were actually 7 to 8 previous victims who came forward about Stewart raping, assaulting, and abusing them, even dating back to June of 2017 when his consecutive sadistic spree began. I have to thank God that they're still alive. Stewart was indicted on 52 counts with a $2 million cash bail. 3 of those counts being murder in the first degree, 8 counts of strangulation, 9 counts of aggravated rape, 2 counts of rape, 5 counts of aggravated kidnapping, and 4 counts of kidnapping, just to name some of them. Due to COVID, his trial for the murders of the 3 women was pushed back multiple times from its original date in April of 2020. In October of 2020, the judge ordered Stewart to take a mental health evaluation to see if he was even competent to stand trial. In September of 2021, he was ruled competent to stand trial, thankfully. And on September 28th, in a shocking turn of events, Stewart actually changed his plea to guilty.
Continuing coverage now, serial killer Stewart Weldon will spend the rest of his life in prison. His trial was set to begin next month, but late today, he pleaded guilty to the murders of 3 women in Springfield. As 22 News anchor Don Shipman explains, his guilty plea closes the door on a years-long murder case that's gripped the local community.
How do you plead, sir? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty, sir.
Serial killer Stewart Weldon pleading guilty to the 2018 murders of 3 women just 1 week before his trial was set to begin. Weldon said that he just wanted to close the case as he pleaded guilty to 39 charges against him listed in a new plea deal. This story, making national headlines, dates back to May 28, 2018. Weldon arrested for allegedly failing to pull over for police. But what started as a traffic stop ended with a kidnapping arrest. A woman inside Weldon's car told police that Weldon had been beating her and holding her against her will. A couple of days later, police make a gruesome discovery after searching his Page Boulevard home.
Defendant admitted to Fabian M. Soleil and Robert T. Kinshirf, psychiatrists, that he killed Kayla Escalante, Ernestine Ryans, and America Lydon by strangling them in the basement of his 1333 Page Boulevard home.
A key piece of evidence was Weldon admitting that he was guilty of those murders during a visit with doctors. In the months and years after those murders, the 22 News I-team looked into Weldon's criminal history and discovered that he was arrested twice in Westfield in 2015 and 2016, and at least a dozen times in Springfield since 2002.
Don Shipman reporting there, and the judge is wasting no time in moving forward in this case. Weldon's sentencing hearing is scheduled for this Thursday, and each murder charges carries a life sentence.
During his meetings with the psychiatrists, Stewart ended up admitting what he did to Kayla, Jordan, and Ernestine. He told Hampton County Superior Court that he just wanted to, quote unquote, hurry up and close this case. Journalists at WWLP 22 News did their own investigations into Stewart's background and learned that he only had a first grade education, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, dyslexia, and ADHD, which, if you don't know, stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Stewart's auntie, who is his late father's sister, named Hannah Weldon, 63 years old at the time, told the Daily Mail that their family was quote-unquote deeply shocked, and her nephew was a sick individual. She said he had been off his medication for a long time and something in him must have just quote-unquote snapped. She said he never showed any of these behaviors towards his own family, and his father probably turned about 50,000 times in his grave behind this tragedy. She said she didn't know the specifics of Stewart's mental instabilities. She mentioned how after a certain age, you can't force anyone to take their medication, and some adults even sell their medication depending on what it is. Hannah stated she found out what happened when her sister called her and told her the news. She said when she saw his picture on the news, she knew it was him because he looked just like his father. She said, quote, when I saw what happened to that girl, I said that boy is sick. He really is. At least he gave her some water to stay hydrated. Something had to snap for him to turn like that, end quote. She went on to say about the 25-year-old girl in the car with him that night, quote, I think it's a damn shame that he handcuffed her, kidnapped her, and beat her with a hammer. It really hurts that somebody could do something like that. If they hadn't stopped him with that broken tail light, they would have never known that she was in that car, end quote. A man named Isaiah Weldon, claiming to be the first cousin of Stewart, wrote a Facebook post that told publications if they wanted any information from him, they would need to pay him 6 figures, which to me was very distasteful. Who gives a fuck about your monetary demands when multiple women were found dead in your cousin's home and several others have been victimized by him? Some people really have no coof, I swear. A neighbor who directly lived behind Stewart's home said she had not a clue of all that went on in that home. She said she never even saw Stewart over at the house, and of all the times her dog would go out into the yard, her dog never picked up on any strange scents either. She said she felt so guilty to then know of the horrifying details that happened right under her nose, no pun intended. There are several photos of the different graves that Stewart dug up for each of his victims.
Daily Mail exclusive on the Springfield House of Horrors, where 3 missing women were found. New disturbing photos show the shallow graves where America Lydon, Ernestine Ryans, and Kayla Escalante were buried. They were discovered in the backyard of suspected serial killer Stewart Weldon's home. These photos were taken by a neighbor, and they show police and crime scene investigators digging up the property, including the outside of Weldon's house.
The trial had been rescheduled for October 12, 2021, but due to the switch of his plea on September 30th, he instead was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
There's nothing I could say that would ease the pain of the families of the victims in this case. I've already indicated that I'm going to accept the agreed upon sentencing recommendation that includes 3 consecutive life sentences. Mr. Sarnacki, you may impose sentence.
Stand up, sir. Mr. Stewart Weldon, hearkening to the sentence the court has awarded against you. An indictment 1879 382, count 1. In consideration of this offense, court orders that you be confined at MCI Cedar Junction for the term of your natural life. On count 2 of said indictment, in consideration of this offense, court orders that you be confined at MCI Cedar Junction for the term of your natural life. This is to run from and after the sentence in count 1. On count 3 of said indictment, in consideration of this offense, court orders that you be confined at MCI Cedar Junction for the term of your natural life. This is to run from and after the sentence in count 2. On counts 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, 19, 23, 32, 37, 46, 47, and 48 of said indictment. In consideration of these offenses, the court orders that you be confined at MCI Cedar Junction for a period of not less than 9 years and not more than 10 years. These will run concurrent with each other and with the sentence in count 1. On counts 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 22, 31, 34, 35, 36, 39, 44, and 49 of said indictment. In consideration of these offenses, the court orders that you be confined at MCI Cedar Junction for a period of not less than 4 years and not more than 5 years. These will run concurrent with each other and the sentence in count 1. On counts 33, 38, and 51 of said indictment, in consideration of these offenses, court orders that you be confined at the Hampton County House of Corrections for a period of 2.5 years to run concurrent with each other and with the sentence in count 1. On count 45 of said indictment, in consideration of this offense, court orders that you be confined at MCI Cedar Junction for a period of not less than 14 years and not more than 15 years to run concurrent with the sentence in count 1. On count 50 of said indictment, in consideration of this offense, the court orders that you be confined at the Hampton County House of Corrections for a period of 2 years to run concurrent with the sentence in count 1. On count 52, the guilty plea has been vacated and a no process has been filed. You will receive credit of 1,222 days. You are advised that you must provide a DNA sample within 1 year of today's date, that you may have the duty to register as a sex offender, and that you have the right to appeal to the Appellate Division of Superior Court pursuant to Rule 64. All fees, including the DNA fee, are hereby waived. Court officers, defendant abides in custody under sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Now, remember I told you earlier about one of Stewart's earlier crimes when he was a teen with his friend Dwight Pottinger. Well, shortly after the 3 women's bodies were discovered in Stewart's home, New Jersey Advance Media reached out to Dwight on Facebook, who had since moved to Jamaica. They asked Dwight if he was shocked to hear that Stewart had 3 bodies hiding in his home, to which Dwight simply responded, "Not really." He attested to being good friends with Stewart and claimed that back in their teen years, Stewart was actually a ladies' man. Now, before I get into my perspective, I do want to give a special thank you to my first channel member ever, Tiffany. Shout out to you, sis. I appreciate your loyalty to the channel. Also, a special shout out to my patrons, the Mrs. and Danielle. Thank you for your unwavering support of my content. Now, something I failed to mention earlier in this story, and I failed to mention it intentionally, is that the women who were found in Stewart's home were all said to have struggled with drug addiction. And this was stated by their own family members during impact statements.
Your Honor, Kayla was a daughter, a sister, and a mother. She could light up a room with her smile, fill it with her laughter. Her love for her friends and her family never dwindled, but instead it grew every day. She could love with the power of 1,000 hearts. She never gave up on the things that meant the most to her. Kayla was my best friend when we were kids, and our lives took separate ways. Yeah, she struggled with addiction, but that didn't define her. It was her mission to stay clean for her family.
I'm America's daughter. Your Honor, I've been asked to write an impact statement to express how my mother's murder has impacted my life. There are no words to describe the pain in my heart that started the day I found out my mom was one of the defendant's victims. The feelings of hurt, sadness, confusion, loneliness, regret, and most of all anger are just a few of my daily emotions now. I wake up every day hoping that this was all a bad dream and relive the horror when I realize it was real. They say time heals all wounds, but Your Honor, I don't feel like this is a wound that will ever heal. I miss my mom. My mom was well known and liked in the Springfield area. I don't know one person who could say anything negative about my mom's personality. She had a hard life. She started out in the system at a young age and experienced countless acts of abuse, neglect, and assault. Despite everything she had been through, she had always kept pushing towards a better life. Her battle with addiction was near an end when she crossed paths with the defendant. She had just completed a recovery program in West Springfield and was making strides in the right direction. She was healthy and looking for a job.
Before I start, I'd like to say that I had to redact my original victim's impact statement. So out of respect for the court, I'm going to try to stay on point, stay on task to get through this. I'm Anthony Ryans, the oldest brother of Ernestine Ryans. I'm here representing the Ryans family, and may it please the court to allow me to speak on behalf of my mom, Clarice Now, and the victims' families with us today. On May 18th, about 3:30 p.m., I received a call from my mother informing me she had just received a phone call from the Springfield Police Department saying they needed to meet with her regarding her daughter, Ernestine Ryans. I was away in Canton, Connecticut, officiating a basketball tournament. My phone immediately started ringing. I looked and I saw that it was from my mom. She told me I needed to immediately come to the house. I knew it wasn't good news. As I approached my mother's house, I noticed 2 unmarked police cars. My heart was racing, my anxiety. As I exited my car, I ran upstairs to the door as fast as I could. I entered the house and towards the living room where my mom is seated. In the house, she says to me she's dead. She was found in that house. What happened after was a blur. I was angry and I was sad at the same time. How could someone do such a thing? I asked myself. She was discarded like a piece of trash. It was hard for me to accept how hard it was. I remember getting a call from the medical examiner. And I asked, "Are you sure if it's her? Are you sure?" I was still in disbelief. All I could think was I'm sure she begged the defendant to let her live, as she had 2 daughters to live for. I can only pray as she was dying that she made peace with her God. The lives of families have been forever changed due to one's reckless, total disregard for human life. My nieces have been left without a mom. My mom without a daughter. Grandkids without a grandmother. I can go on and on. Ernestine Ryans had a great impact on the Ryans family, and many others as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Miracle Thomas, the daughter of Ernestine Ryans. I honestly can't possibly say enough grace to describe how my mother's affected me and my family. I was 13 years old when her life was taken. My man had no idea how much she meant to so many people. How many people he forced me to be by. Oh, all of the birthdays, graduations, and many more milestones we all wish to share with her in the future, God. I'm now 16 and soon to graduate in 2023. She was my best friend, protector, and nurturer. She poured so much of herself into me to make sure I succeeded. I wish I was able to save her from coming in contact with a monster. She did have her battles, but she always had a heart of gold, and no one deserved to have their life taken away. My mom and the two other women who I'm sure have beautiful souls as well. She always did her best to be there for anyone who needed anything in the world. She was always there to help. I hope that this man serves his time, that he thinks about how many people he's hurt, how much pain his actions have inflicted on so many people.
Your Honor, my name is Kiera Starks, and I am the daughter of Ernestine Ryans. My life and the life of her grandchildren has forever changed. My son was 2 years old, just starting to be able to interact with her, and I was 6 months pregnant with the granddaughter she never got to meet, but was so excited to know she was coming. That was the last way she saw me. For 3 months, I wondered every single day where she was. Is she okay? Having hope we would see her again. The day I gave birth, I still wasn't aware she was dead, laying alone in a dirty, dark garage, her light taken. I never imagined or would even let that thought cross my mind. I was just hoping that the picture my husband sent after I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl that instantly reminded me of my mother's beautiful face made it to her phone, and I would get a reply that day from her telling me she was on her way. That obviously didn't happen, and only a few weeks after coming home, trying to readjust to my family life with a new baby, while I was still wondering where is my mom, I found out my mother was actually murdered. Never will we be able to fulfill that dream we shared together of her finally moving to Pennsylvania with my family to be a full-time grandma, my little sister included.
The prosecutor stated that Stewart lured his victims with drugs, used the drugs with the women to bring their guards down, and then overpowered them after a binge.
Because this defendant saw to it, he preyed on women who had almost nothing, who were simply surviving, and he subjected them to physical and sexual violence that was completely and utterly depraved. If you were to isolate out each victim's case here, each instant on its own, it would be one of the most horrifying cases that we see come in front of this court. But these were not isolated, they were part of an elaborately organized pattern on the part of the defendant. And the facts of this case may seem chaotic and senseless, but it was all orchestrated to serve the desires of Stewart Weldon, and that started with his selection of his victims. He looked for women with drug addiction problems, women that he felt he could manipulate. These were not violent abductions, Your Honor. He used his charm and his charisma to get them to his house, the promises of drugs and money. All the women who survived their encounter that knew Mr. Weldon or Jersey beforehand said he had been nothing but nice to them ahead of time. It's charming. They would go to the house, and the same choreography occurred each time. They would go to the basement. He would bring them to the washer and dryer where they would both ingest crack cocaine together. Then he would bring them to another room, and that's when the assaults would begin. He once said to the mother of his children, the best time to jump on somebody is after they've just used drugs, when they're first high. The evidence in this case would show that Mr. Weldon took great pains to control his environment during these encounters. He knew a way to manipulate his mother and other people staying in the house to get them to leave for long periods of time before he did this, when he knew he would be safe.
With this knowledge, I couldn't help but to wonder if that was why it took so long for police to find them, and if they were ever going to look for them at all. I can't help but to wonder if they didn't care and brushed the women off as addicts who didn't need any saving. The families put on their own missing persons search, utilizing those close to them and social media posts to spread the word about their loved ones. Ernestine was reported missing that March, 2 months before her body was discovered, and Jordan was reported missing 5 months before she was discovered. To me, it sounds like police dropped the ball and didn't take the family serious at all. And unfortunately, poor Kayla, she was never even reported missing. And really, when you think about it, police dropped the ball for an entire 2 decades, all up and through the East Coast. Stewart had been a menace to society since he was in his late teens. They kept letting him go, kept letting him get away with all the trauma and pain he inflicted on everyone he made a victim. Why did it take all the way up until he was 40 years old to finally be put away and removed from humanity? Meanwhile, you have people who get detained and kept away from their families for lesser, non-violent, trivial cases. To me, justice has finally been served. However, I wonder if the families could have ever filed a suit against authorities for their negligence. If anyone watching this is knowledgeable in that aspect, please feel free to leave your pundit opinion below in the comments. And what I find crazy about this also is that this home actually went up for sale about 2 years after the women's bodies were discovered there. When the house first went up for sale, a realtor said that they aren't obligated to include any details about who used to live in a home or what happened in a home to potential buyers. So anyone who knew nothing of what happened at 1333 Page Boulevard would be buying that home on the souls of Ernestine, Jordan, and Kayla. I wonder if anyone lives there today. This is another case where I also wonder, as I did in the Kevin Davis story, if humans can be born with this evil gene, because I can't for the life of me ever fathom why or how someone can be so diabolical. And as for the mother of his children, I wonder who she or they are, and if the children are even with their mother at this point. I wonder if said mother knew that this is who she procreated with, or did he treat her differently? Is she also someone who turned to drugs? Was he in a relationship with the mother of his children? And what about his own mother? Did he abuse her as well? Was she aware of how disgraceful her son is? I have so many questions. My mind is literally blown with this story. And if anyone attributes his mental instabilities to why he committed these crimes, is that a true possibility, or is this simply the result of the absence of a soul? Maybe both. I will admit I'm unsure if evil acts to this degree could be a result of said instability, so feel free to educate me respectfully in the comments on that sentiment as well. This story is devastating all around. Children are growing up without their parent, and by the way, no word of the fathers to the deceased women's children either, I noticed. Nonetheless, children are growing up without their makers, families are missing their loved ones still to this day, and multiple women are literally, mentally, and physically scarred for life. I pray that Stewart's conviction brings some sort of peace to all the families involved and to the women who are still here with us today. Rest in heavenly peace, Ernestine, Jordan, and Kayla. No matter how you lived your lives or what vices you had, I wish you hadn't had to face your fate in this way. Your names and memory will forever live on. Fly high angels, you'll never be forgotten.